Chesed Aleph, and the bottom of the page, 88a. So the Mishnah says that a courtyard that's less than 4 amas, you can't pour water into it on Shabbos unless you made a wastewater pit to collect that. Whether the pit is inside the chutzah or outside the chutzah. The only thing is if the pit is outside the chutzah, then it needs to be covered like we just looked at that picture. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, his opinion was that I'm allowed to pour it into a drain stream as long as it's covered for 4 amas in the Rosh Hashanah. However, the sages said that you can't pour directly into a stream. You have to pour onto a roof, and you let the roof flow from there into the stream. Then we just finished the Mishnah. We said that different parts of the courtyard combined to be 4 amas. The last piece of the Mishnah, which we'll get to today in the explanation of the Gemara, Bezos Hashem, is that if there's 2 people in the courtyard, one of them made a pit, one of them in a different area, a different floor of the courtyard, did not make a pit. The other person, the one on the higher floor, is not allowed to use the pit. We're going to discuss if it's because of an Eiruvin or not. Okay, the Gemara starts off like this, the second to the bottom line. My time. What's the reason that 4 amas is mutter? What's the reason that you can use an area, a chutzah that's 4 amas, and you can pour water into it? Amar Rabba. Rabba says, okay, because a person would naturally use 2 sa of water a day. And now, so where do we get the 4 amas from? The ba'ar ba'amas adam reitzel is alfan. I'm not familiar with this enough to know you have dirt floors or all of this, but apparently when you have dirt floors, when it gets hot or dry, you need to sprinkle water so the dust doesn't come up. Yeah, small dust storms. You have to put the water down to keep it there. So if there's a 4x4 amas, so then you would want to be mizalef. Mizalef is to sprinkle. And maybe I don't know how they sprinkled it. It would throw it over or something, and it would keep the dust on the floor. So there was a benefit to that. The pachas midaled, if it was less than 4 amas, then when you would spill it out, sheifchan, then you were spilling it out, it was actually spilling out into the Rosh Hashanah, and that's an issue. So ida averuka, then if you made the wastewater pit, then shari means mutter. Eloi, but if you didn't make the wastewater pit, then it's going to be asur. So in other words, we're explaining why you need an area 4x4, because you don't want the water to go out. You want the water to stay here. You're using the water for a purpose. If it happens to go out, so it's called it went out, but that's not what I intended. So a 4x4 amas would give you reason to keep the water here, because you're using it to sprinkle the water to keep the dust down. Reb Zera has a different shot. So there's a machlekes here, Rabba and Reb Zera. Reb Zera's shot is Dalet amas timey. If your courtyard is 4 amas, then the water could get absorbed into that. However, pachas midalet amas light timey. It doesn't get absorbed. So once again, if a person has a courtyard that's 4 amas, he's allowed to pour his wastewater into his courtyard, and if it flows out, it's no problem. Question is why? Rabba says because he doesn't want it to go out, because he wants to sprinkle the water there to keep the dust down. And Reb Zera says because it could get absorbed there. Those are the 2 explanations for the measurement of 4 amas that makes it permissible to pour your water there. My binayu, what's the difference between Rab and Reb Zera? Marabaya, Abaya explains the difference. Abaya is a student of Rabba, that we know. It's a student of Rabbi Yosef also, but I'm not sure his relationship with Reb Zera. Abaya says, Arch v'katin ikar binayu. Long and narrow is the difference. So apparently, this way the Rishonim explain this, is that if you're trying to sprinkle the water to keep the dust down, then it needs to be a square of 4 by 4. But if we're talking about absorption, then it doesn't need to be a square. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I could explain it the other way also, but this is how the Rishonim Rashi is learning it. Okay, so the difference between them, if it's not a square 4 by 4, would come out as like this. If you wanted to, if we're going to follow Rabba's opinion that you're sprinkling the water to keep the dust down, so then if it's not a square 4 by 4, even though you have 16 amas, but it's not going to work. And if you follow Reb Zeir's opinion that the issue was that it needs to be absorbed into the ground, it needs to be able to be absorbed, then it's good enough. Yeah. Okay. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. A courtyard and the achsadra. Achsadra is a portico, an open area. At least it's open on one side, at least maybe 3 sides. It has a roof, but it doesn't have walls. So that could combine to 4 amas. Now, what the Gemara is thinking here is that the achsadra is not it's not actually surrounding the courtyard. Now, let's put a picture. Yeah. The Gemara starts off thinking that here's my courtyard, and the achsadra is next to it. And we're talking about that the courtyard is not 100% 4 by 4 amas. The achsadra gives you a little more space, so it could combine to be the 4 by 4 amas. That's what the Gemara is thinking right now. So it says like this. If it doesn't need to be a square 4 by 4, nicha. It works out because Reb Zeira said that my concern was that the water should be able to be absorbed in the ground, and that way I can pour the water here because it doesn't need to go out. It could technically be absorbed. It may go out, but that's leinis kaima machshavta, so it could be absorbed. So good. Ela l'Rabba kasha, but according to Rabba, we don't have a square. According to Rabba, it needs 4 by 4 square. So Tirgama Reb Zeira liba de Rabba. Reb Zeira explains it according to Rabbi here. When I learned, I think it was 4th grade, and then 5th grade, I learned Eilu Metzias. So in Eilu Metzias, there's Abaya and Rava have a machlekes over there, Yesh Lamidas. So anyway, there's a kasha on one of them, and one of the opinions, and then the Gemara says that Tirgama, that's one. The other one answers it. Very good, Yossi. So Rava answers the question that was on Abaya. So my teacher then said, see, this is in Torah, we have an argument, but everyone is looking for the truth. So even the other side, if there's a support for him, but he'll still come and say, you should know it's not a real support for me. Because if he's looking for the truth, he'll help the other side. Okay. So here, Tegma Reb Zeira aliba de Rabba. Reb Zeira answers according to Rabba, which is the opposite opinion. He says, we have a simple teretz. It's not that there was like a diamond, a square achsadra that wasn't 4 by 4, and then at the other edge of it sticking out was the chutzner, and then the achsadra sticking out. No, it was the chutzner in the center. And there was all around the chutzner was another 2 amas of an achsadra, which creates a 4 by 4 square. Why do you have to make it a problem? You can make it, say that that's the scenario, and the chutzner and the achsadra will combine. Okay, that's the teretz. Tashima, we're looking for support for either way. Which one is the main reason here? Why you should be allowed to pour water into your courtyard, even though it's going to flow out into Rosh Hashanah, because your intention was what? Because either your intention was to sprinkle the water to keep the dust down, or your intention is for the water to be absorbed. And the difference we said was if it needs to be a square. So Tashima Chatzushem Badalaramas al Dalaramas, a courtyard that doesn't have 4 by 4 amas. This is the first time we're seeing This is the issue. First time we're seeing 4x4. See, if you look in the Mishnah didn't tell me that detail. So the Mishnah said a courtyard, shehi pchusa me'arba amas. A courtyard that's less than 4 amas. You can read that in a lot of different ways. That means that if it is 4 amas, but 4 amas in what dimension? In what? So here the Brisa spells it out. It says it needs to be a 4x4 amas. Then, if it doesn't have a 4x4 amas, then ain't shaykhun l'seif chamayim b'Shabbos. Can't put water into it. It says according to Rabba, that says it's sprinkling nicha. It's good because Rabba holds it needs to be a square. The Brisa says it needs to be a square. We got it. Ela Rab Zera kasha. According to Rab Zera, it's a question. Why does it need to be a square? Could be 4 amas. Could be 8x2. Doesn't need to be 4x4. Amalach Rab Zera. Rab Zera is going to respond to you that Hamani Rabbanan. It gets a little bit complex here. Rab Zera is going to respond to you that the Brisa is not the opinion that you think it is. The Brisa is the opinion of the Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan hold that you need zila, that it needs to be, that you're sprinkling, it needs to be a square. Where did we get this from? So it goes back to the Mishnah. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov said that you can pour water into a biv, into a drain. As long as when it gets to the Rishus Harabim, it's covered. That's Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov's opinion. The Rabbanan said you can't pour it directly into a drain. Why can't you pour it directly into a drain? The Rabbanan said even if the drain is 100 amas, that was their expression. You can't pour it into the drain even if it's 100 amas. Now 100 amas definitely has 16 amas in it. That's what we're looking for, a 4x4. If it's for sprinkling, then it needs to be a square. If it's for absorption, it doesn't need to be a square. So according to the Rabbanan, why can't I pour it into the drain pipe? It definitely has 16 amas. The problem is that it doesn't have a 4x4 square. It must be that the Rabbanan hold that the reason why I'm not allowed to pour into a chutzah that's less than 4 amas is because I need the square. And why do I need the square? Because I need to do the sprinkling to keep the dust down. So therefore, the Rabbanan that hold I can't pour it into a drain is because the drain isn't a square. So what's going on here is Reb Zera is now explaining that I know that there is an opinion that says it needs to be a square. I'm not following that opinion. Which opinion am I following? So he goes on. He says like this: Masnisin Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Our Mishnah is Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says you're allowed to pour it into the drain. That means he holds that we're only concerned about absorption. What Reb Zera is doing is he's saying that the machlekes that I have with Rabba is the machlekes between Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov and the Chachamim, and the Mishnah is Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, which is my opinion. In other words, the Mishnah doesn't need to be a square. According to the Mishnah, it doesn't need to be a square. It's the whole Mishnah is Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. The Gemara is going to ask, 1 second, you're going to have to redo something here in the Mishnah because that wasn't the reading that we had. Let's take a look. What's forcing Reb Zera to make the whole Mishnah like Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov? The Mefarshim explain, well, there's a little bit of an issue here because I don't really need a reason for that. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, the Gemara tells us, is Mishnasei Kavanaki. His halacha his rulings are always the halacha. So my duchke, the Reb Zera, look, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, it's the best. He's the best opinion. So okay, that's a discussion. Whatever the case is, Amar Rava says Masnishin Kashise. Reb Zera looked at the Mishnah. And he had a question in it. Because of that question, he learned it a certain way and ended up that the whole Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. What was his question? My area, the Tani Chatzar Shipchusa. Why did it say a courtyard that's less than 4 amas? Listening, let it teach directly. Chatzar Shem Badalat Amas al Dalat Amas. Let it say directly. A courtyard That's not a 4x4 square. Why didn't it say it clearly? Must be. It must be that it doesn't need to be a 4x4 square. And that's the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov that says you can pour it into a drain pipe. And the whole issue is just absorption. And it doesn't need to be a square. So even the beginning of the Mishnah is Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Now, when you look at the Mishnah, what happens is like this. I have an opinion at the beginning of the Mishnah that says a courtyard that's not 4 amas, you can't pour it into it on Shabbos, unless there's the wastewater pit. Then I have the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov that says I can pour it into a drain pipe. And the Chachamim say that you can't pour it into the drain pipe. So what Reb Zera did is he says the first part of the Mishnah, which we thought was the opinion of the Chachamim, is really not. It's really Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Come on, ask 1 second. Me the Sefer Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Rachel Lav Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. The end of the Mishnah is Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Then the beginning of the Mishnah is not Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Why did you introduce Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov in the center, or in the middle of the Mishnah, if his opinion was the beginning of the Mishnah? So the Gemara says, rather, Kula Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, the whole Mishnah is Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. And Chasuri Mechsra. It's missing words. You have to teach it to follow it, to teach it like this. Chotzer, a courtyard, which is less than 4 amas. Can't put water into it on Shabbos. But once it is Dalet Amas, then Sheikhan, then you can. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Aimer, because Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says, we added in the shin over there, that, or because. He says, Biva Kamar Dalet Amas, B'Shas Sheikhan L'Seichem Mayim B'Shabbos. You can even pour it into a drain pipe. As long as it's as long as it's covered 4 amas in the Rishus Rabbim, it's going to be fine. Okay, the first 4 amas of the Rishus Rabbim. Okay. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Aimer Biva Kamer. Now we go explain Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, the next piece of the Gemara. Mas Nisan, the like Chananya. Our Mishnah is not like Chananya. Okay, when we say our Mishnah over here, we're referring to, I believe that the Gemara is missing a Bachulu. I don't know if your Gemaras have it, but in between the 2 dots, it says Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Eimer Biv HaKamer. Mine just has 2 dots there, but I think it's missing a Bachulu. A printer thing. So I'm not editing the Gemara. It's a printer. Etc. Why? Because really we're not discussing Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov's opinion, we're really discussing the opinion that follows Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, which is the Chachamim say that you can pour it onto the roof, and from the roof it can go into the div, but not directly. So it says Masnisin. That opinion of the Rabbanan that says you can't pour it directly in is the like Chananya, is not like Chananya. The Tanya was taught in the Brisa. Chananya says, "I feel a gag may amale yishper." Can't pour it onto the roof either. Why? The roof doesn't absorb. The roof doesn't absorb. It's just it just makes it flow off. They put some type of tar, tip, or something on the roof. The roofs are flat. But whatever the case is, they didn't want it to get absorbed. And so it was basically pouring it, when you pour it on the roof, you basically was considered like pouring it into the drain, which was an issue. Tana, it's taught in a brisa. When do you say that you need to have a wastewater pit in the chatzah that's too small to be able to pour water there on Shabbos, and the water will flow out into the Rosh Hashanah? And when do you say that you need a wastewater pit there in order for this to be allowed? That's only in the summer, half the year. Avod may say geshamim, but in the winter, sheifech sheina ve'ena nimna. You can pour water into your courtyard, even if it doesn't have a wastewater pit, even if the courtyard's too small. You pour the water in and it's no problem. Okay, we're not talking about watering grass. We're talking about carrying from one domain to the other. When you're just pouring it there and you're letting the water flow. Watering is a different issue. Watering grass is a different issue. So the whole Mishnah, we didn't realize this when we read the Mishnah. When we read the Mishnah, we thought the size of the courtyard was the big deal. Turns out that, yeah, the size is a big deal, but only half a year. Only in the summer. In the winter, it's no problem. Amar Rava. I'm sorry, the Gemara asks, my time, what's the reason? Amar Rava. Rava explains, Adam person wants the water to be absorbed right in his field. He doesn't need it to go out. He's willing for the water to stay there. What's the issue? You're worried that your courtyard's going to get wet, dirty, or something? It's the rainy season anyway. Are you adding another bucket of water there? It doesn't do anything to it. Amalei Abaya says, 1 second. And the Adam writes, that's a heter. The fact that you don't care if there's water there because it's not. What about when it says that you can't pour it into the biv, into the drain pipe? Over there, you don't care if it gets absorbed or if it stays there. And nevertheless, it says you're not allowed to pour it. What are you saying that if there's water there and you don't care if it gets dirty or something, or you don't care for it to actually leave, you don't mind if it stays there, so then it becomes mutter. In the drain pipe as well, you pour it there, you don't mind if it stays there or if it gets absorbed. And it says you're not allowed to pour it into according to that opinion. Over there, what are we worried about when you're pouring it into the courtyard in the winter? Are you worried that the courtyard's going to be dirty and really he wants the water to go out? The courtyard's dirty anyway. He doesn't care if the water stays there. Maybe the people passing by outside are going to say, oh my gosh, look, this person's drain, the water's coming out on Shabbos. That doesn't look good. So it says, well, the water's coming out on Shabbos anyway, not from him because it was raining. So we're not worried about that either. So that's why in the winter there's no problem. What we're looking for is the person's mindset that he doesn't mind the water there. That's the first part. He doesn't mind the water there. He doesn't mind the water there because it's wet anyway. Maybe there's some sort of gezerah. People are going to say that the water was poured. He's pouring the water out of his rishus. He said, well, there's water pouring out anyway from his rishus, and no one's saying that he's doing anything wrong. However, in the summer, that's where you have the problem. So that's what this price is explaining in this discussion. That the whole problem is only in the summer, because in the winter, he doesn't have any issues with pouring water into his koyan. Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, in the winter, uka, that the wastewater pit, it can hold, if it can hold 2 sa, which is 288 eggs size. Sa is 144. Nice and nice time, then you can pour into it 2 sa. Machzik sa, if it can contain 1 sa, nice and nice sa, then you can pour into it a sa. In the summer, machzik sa nice and nice time. You can pour into it 2 sa if it can hold 2 sa. Sa, if it can hold 1 sa, 144 eggs worth, a nice and you can't put it into at all. That's Rav Nachman's statement. The Gemara asks, 1 second. Why can't you at least pour it into 1 sa? It's not going out, it's going to get absorbed. The Gemara says, maybe you're going to put into it too much. So if that's the case, if you have an issue with pouring it too much in the summer, maybe you're going to pour too much in the winter. So it says, what are you concerned about? If you're worried about that the courtyard's going to get dirty, and you're going to if you pour too much and therefore you want it to leave, so then it's dirty anyway. If you're worried that people are going to see the drain pipe is flowing with water on Shabbos, and people are going to say, look at so-and-so, he's pouring his water out on Shabbos. Well, the water's anyways going out on Shabbos, whether he does anything or not. Okay. Comes out here. Sorry. Comes out here is that there seems to be a difference between Reb Nachman, the way Reb Nachman is learning it, and the Brisa. I don't know how Reb Nachman is going to fit with the Brisa. It seemed like in the winter, from the Brisa, it seemed like in the winter you don't need anything. According to Reb Nachman, in the winter you still need the uka there. I'm not sure how that gets answered. Okay. So Amar Abaya. Abaya says, if that's the case, that it's anyways flowing with water in the winter, then you can pour much more. You can pour even a kur. Kur is, I think, 30 sa, 15 sa, kirayim. You can pour much more. Why? Because the water is anyways flowing out. No one's going to say anything, and you're worried about your courtyard getting dirty. Your courtyard's dirty anyway. Okay. This was the interesting case, the last case of the Mishnah. He said that if there are two apartments, let's take a look in the picture again. We'll look at it carefully. Okay, this is a possibility that this person pours his water into the uka. However, this fellow over here should not pour it into his uka. That's what the Mishnah said. I have to discuss why. So there's an inherent problem when you say that, because if there's a problem of Eiruvin, then no one should be allowed to use the courtyard. There's something that needs to be resolved there. Amar Rava afilu irvu. Rava says it's not a problem of Eiruvin, even if they made an Eiruv. Even if they made an Eiruv, only one person can use that uka, not the other one, that wastewater pit. Amar Abaye my time. What's the reason? If there's an Eiruv, what's the problem? Maybe it's because there's going to be too much water going into that pit. But I don't care if it's a wastewater pit. I don't care if it's a gistra, it's a broken vessel. Brecha is a small pool, or a reva is some other type of container, bath. Even if it was filled already, I can still pour into it. What are you worried that the person on that has the uka is going to fill it up? The other person shouldn't be allowed to use it. It's not true. Once it's filled up, you can keep adding water to it. Doesn't matter. On Shabbos, it's going to spill over into Rosh Hashanah. It's not a concern. That wasn't his intention. Rather, he says that you have to say it different. Amar Rava Rava taught Leishanim Ela Shaloi Irvu, or on top of Peitas. It was only taught when no Erev was made. Abel Irvu Mutarin. But if there was an Erev, then it's acceptable. Both people can use the Uka. The Chila Yervu my time alike. Now there's a problem up here. If there's no Erev, why can't he use it? I'm not sure. There's maybe something in the gift here that's a little different. I think the question is, why is one person allowed to use it and not the other one if it's in the courtyard? Amar Ravashi, if you look at the picture, he did a sort of like gives us the commentary here. What's happening is this person pours out of his house. He's not carrying in his chatzar. He's just pouring it into the chatzar, and it's going directly into the uka. This person is pouring it. He would like to pour it out, but he's probably going to end up carrying his kalim into the chutzner, and there's no way, so he's not allowed. In other words, this person doesn't need to carry anything into the chutzner because he can just pour it. This person needs to carry his kelim in. What about pouring the water directly out? Sounds like a problem. For some reason, it's not an issue. All right. So can you get it? Ask her if you can get it. Okay, we start a new parak. Yeah, this parak is an important parak because a lot of things that weren't clear to us hopefully will become clarified here. Kol gagay seir rishus achas. All of the roofs are considered one rishus. Which means like this, that when the Chachamim said, the sages told us that you're not allowed to carry in a chutzner without an Eruv, that's only in a chutzner, which is really a common place for people to use. They didn't want that you carry out from your private domain into the common area. And so they said you have to make an Eruv. What about the roofs? Now, the roofs is similar to the chutzner, usually. It's also probably a common area if the houses are attached or whatever. So Reb Meir says that all the roofs of the whole city are considered one rishus. The Chachamim never made a gzeira about using the roofs. It was only the common area in the chutzner, which that was the frequent area that everyone used. The roofs, there was no gzeira. And therefore, there's no need for Eiruvin on roofs. However, he does throw in, he says, as long as the roofs are on the same level. If one's higher, 10 tefachim than another one, then you have a problem. We have to see in the Gemara what's the issue. There's no issue of Eiruvin, so why is there an issue of 10 tefachim? That's a new problem. Okay. The Chachamim say no. Each one is its own rishus. Each roof is its own rishus. You can go onto your roof. You can't go onto the next roof. And that's not you're carrying without an Eruv, without joining your courtyard to the next courtyard, without joining your roof to the next roof. You can't do that. You can carry on your roof. Reb Shimon says, Achas, Gages, Vachas, Chatzeres, Vachas, Karpitas, Rishus, Achasein. It's one rishus. However, it's Lekelim Sheshabsim L'Saychan. It's one rishus for everything that was in that domain when Shabbos started. However, but not for things that were in the house when Shabbos started. Things that were in the house when Shabbos started, you can't carry them out to another domain. I think you can carry it to your roof, but you can't carry it to your neighbor's roof. But things that were on your roof, you can carry to your neighbor's roof, and you can carry from the roof to the park, to all of that, as long as there's a wall, as long as there's no problem of rishuyos, that it's rishus rabim. Talking about that it's all rishus yachid, it's considered a rishus yachid. The only thing is that it wasn't joined together with the law, with Eiruvin, with food and all of that. Yosef, Abaya Baravin, Rabbi Chanina Baravin. We just had that here yesterday, right? Yeah. Abaya Baravin, Rabbi Chanina Baravin. It said Ein Chai in the Carmelites. I had that yesterday. The Yosef Abaya Gabayo. And Abaya was sitting with them, with these two Baravins, Abaya Baravin, Chanina Baravin. Abaya was sitting there. The Yosef came and they were saying the following. Bishleim Rabbanon, we understand the opinion of the Rabbanon. Sabri, they hold. Shame shed yurin chalukan lamata, just like down below in the houses. There are separate houses. Yurin chalukan, separate residence. Kach yurin chalukan lamayla. So too, there are separate residences on the roof. Elul Reb Meir, but according to Reb Meir, Micah suffered. What's the sheet of Reb Meir? He can't hold it separate residences on the roof because he says you can carry from one roof to the other. If he holds that, so why does he say it's all one rishus? Okay, so he holds the opposite. If he holds that, well, Down below, it's all one rishus, but not above. The kol ma'ala miyud rishus achasi, but he holds anything that's above 10 tvachim is considered its own domain. It's in its own, anything above 10 tvachim is not owned by the individual that's beneath it, the airspace. So afilu gagavay asara, nami. So he's asking that why did a Reb Meir make a difference if one is 10 tefachim taller than the one that's lower 10 tefachim? We said that you can carry from across all the roofs of the city without Eiruvin, but if one is higher and one's lower, 10 tefachim, then you can't. Why? What's the difference? Once it's above 10 tefachim, then everything is all the same rishus. It doesn't matter if it's this one is 20 tefachim. Once it's above 10 tefachim, it shall be the same. So Amar le Allahu Abaya that was sitting with them says, he says to them, you haven't heard. This that Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abdimi said, anywhere where you find two domains and it's one rishus, Kagoin, for example. In other words, one rishus means that it's both rishus hayachid. You have two domains. Kagoin amad b'rishus hayachid, kavaya sara, b'rachav daled. Big chumrah here. If you have in your own property, your own rishus hayachid, you have a pillar, 10 tefachim high, and it's 4 tefachim wide, so that technically could be a separate rishus. Also, lekativ love, you're not allowed to put anything on it. It's unbelievable. Can't put anything on this post. Gezeira mishum tel b'rishus harabim. There's a gezeira that if you can put things on a post, on a pillar that's in your own property, you may end up doing that when you're walking on the street. You may take your hat off and put it on that or something, and that's putting from a rishus harabim into a rishus hayachid. That's its own, or I don't know if it's rishus hayachid. What would it be in rishus harabim? Yeah, maybe it is rishus hayachid. It is rishus hayachid if it has that area. If it has 10 tefachim tall and 10 tefachim tall and 4 tefachim wide.
Didn't we learn this way back where you had these kind of little pillars in the middle of which a person was wearing? Or didn't we learn this?
We learned this in the beginning of Shabbos. We had this.
Yeah, so what was the maskana there?
Yeah, so it's definitely a problem in a rishus harabim. The heterim in the rishus harabim was if it was under 4 tefachim wide, then it was, I think, a makom p'tur. So that it wouldn't be a rishus, but here it becomes a separate rishus. Now that's no problem. What's going on in rishus harabim it's not a chiddush, but the chiddush of Reb Meir is that I'm not allowed to do it in my own property because I may end up doing it in rishus harabim. That's a huge chumrah. Okay. They thought that this is referring to even a mill, a fil gigas, or an overturned barrel. You can't put anything on top of that. Abaya says, no, I wasn't referring to that, or Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abdimi wasn't referring to that. This is what it was taught. It's referring to something that has a designated place. It's not just referring to any item in your own courtyard. You can't put it down. Certain items that are set there, that are permanent, those are the ones that you're not supposed to put it on because it's a gezeira. You might end up putting things into rishus harabim. The Gemara asks 1 second. Very kaisel shebein beis chatzeros the kavua. What about if there's a wall? That's kavua. The wall is 10 tefachim high. What if it's 4 tefachim wide? Can you put something on that wall? Well, Amar Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda says, "Kishetetimtze loymel divrei Meir gagen rishus la'atzman, chatzirus la'atzman, k'tivus rishus la'atzman." I'm gonna read this. If you look carefully, you'll find that according to Reb Meir, all roofs have their own rishus, as you can carry amongst the roofs. Chatzeros have their own rishus, and karfifas for the parks, they have their own rishus. Now, according to that, you're allowed to carry from one chatzer to another chatzer without an eruv. Unbelievable. Everything that we learned is just like falls away. If this is the maskana. We learned you can't carry from one courtyard to another. You're ever saying that? No, you can carry from one courtyard to another. Because the mayor says everything is the same. If all roofs are the same, then all courtyards are the same. My love, the Charlotte Tule, Derech Kaisel. How are you going to carry from one courtyard to the other? You're going to put it on the wall and you're going to take it off on the other side. In 1 second. I'm not allowed to put something on a post. You're telling me I can put it on a wall and take it. It doesn't make sense. You can't, something's missing here. If I can't put it on a post, I can't put it on a wall that's 4 tvachim wide. I'm a Rav Huna Bar Yehuda. Rav Huna Bar Yehuda says I'm a Rav Sheshes. Loi, that's not the pshat. He doesn't say that you're allowed to put it on a wall and then take it off to the other courtyard from the top of the wall. Separate rishus. What does he mean? He's talking about that you're bringing it through the door. It was all a mistaken assumption. So he wasn't taking it off the wall. Yeah, there is a real issue. Rameir has an issue of anything that's 10 tvachim distant from something else in a permanent way. We have a problem putting it on top of it in Rosh Hashanah. But that's not a problem. But it's not a problem to carry across roofs, and it's not a problem to carry across courtyards. Mamish would mean that you don't need an eruv from one courtyard to another. That itself is a big chiddush that Rameir holds us. We didn't learn this before. We learned Reb Shimon. We knew Reb Shimon held all the roofs. That we learned, but this is interesting. Yeah, accept something new. At first, whenever you hear something new, that's first the rejection. Snack every. Okay, now I read it once. Slowly. Maybe I heard it once. Okay. The Chachamim say that every roof has its own rishus. Itmar. How are we going to explain this? Rav Amar in metaltalim by. Rav says that according to the Chachamim, you're not allowed to carry on each roof itself. Elabar ba'amas. Only within 4 cubits. Why? There's no mechitza up there. There's no wall. Well, maybe it's surrounded by the courtyard. The problem is that my house is not separated from the next house. So, according to the Chachamim, each house is its own area, but because I don't have a divider between my rishus and the next rishus, so then it's considered like it's open one to another. That's an issue. Open one to another without an eruv is an issue. So you can only carry within 4 cubits on your own roof. Shmuel says different. He says, you're allowed to carry across your roof. That's no problem. But your whole roof. It's directly open to the next one. It says, if you had real walls, then it would not be a problem. Nikaris means recognizable walls. And it wouldn't be a problem. Keep ligi, whereas the machlikas, the mechitzas and nikaris, we have walls that aren't recognizable. What does it mean, not recognizable? What we're looking at is that I have walls under me in my house. And they don't continue up further than the roof. The roof covers those walls. But I could say a halachic roof, I can make this imaginary wall, this fictitious wall, that could continue up through my roof because that's the wall of my house. And it's called good asik. I could say that those walls continue up further than where they ended. You say this sometimes. If you're on a platform, you can say, good asik, that the well continues up. Rav Amrein metalton by Allah Barbamas by Amar good asik mechitzta. Rav holds that you don't say good asik mechitzta. Shmuel metalton bekuli da Amar good asik mechitzta. Shmuel says that I look at the imaginary walls and therefore I can carry in my whole area. Amar says, the Mishnah says, Chachamim Aimrim, Kol echad ve'echad, Rishus liyatzmai. Each one is its own rishus. Now that sounds like that you can carry in the whole thing. Bishleim Shmuel, that he says you can carry in the whole thing. Nicha. El Rav Kasha, but according to Rav, why does it say it's Rishus liyatzmai? It sounds like you can carry the whole thing. You can't carry it all. It says, Amri Bei Rav Mishmei de Rav. The yeshiva of Rav answered this question. That what does it mean? It's Rishus liyatzmai, it's its own domain. Shleyataltel shtei amis begag zeh, shtei amis begag zeh. Not that I can carry 4 amas in more than 4 amas in my own domain, because it's Rishus B'fnei Atzmai. Because the emphasis was different. The emphasis could be that it's Rishus B'fnei Atzmai and you can carry in the whole area. That's how Shmuel looked at it. Rav looks at it, it's Rishus B'fnei Atzmai and you can't cross the line. What about in your own area? Oh, you can't carry 4 amas either. But it depends where you put the emphasis. But Rishus B'fnei Atzmai is that you can't cross the line even if it's just 2 amas on this side and 2 amas on that side, which means even just to cross the line at all, even 1 inch here and 1 inch there, you can't do it. So it's a different emphasis. That's how they answer. Umar says 1 second. Rabbi Lazar says, Rabbi Lazar is a friend of Rabbi Yechanan in Tveria. He says, Ki avinu beBavel, before I came to Eretz Yisrael, we were looking for this before when Rabbi Lazar was, we had something with Rabbi Lazar seeing Rav, where's Rav? Havi Amrinan, they would say, Bei Rav Mishmei de Rav, Yeshiva of Rav in the name of Rav, Amru, Ein metalton boy. They said that you can't carry on the roof, Ela ba'arba amas, only within 4 amas. However, V'hani de Beishmol Tano, but there was a brisa that was taught in the Yeshiva of Shmuel that Ein lahem ala gagan, that they only have their own roof. Now, this brisa that's taught in the yeshiva of Shmuel contradicts the opinion of Rav. Now, the Gemara could answer that Rav is a Tana and he argues on the brisa, but the Gemara avoids that as much as possible until it has no other solutions. Then it will say that. But meanwhile, we'd like it to the brisa that they taught in the yeshiva of Shmuel should fit. So, according to this brisa, you have the whole roof. Ein lahen elagagan. My ein lahen elagagan. What does it mean that they only have their roof? Lav, is it not the sharet that you can carry in the whole roof? The Gemara says, 1 second. 1 second. Mi alima mi masnisin. You asked that question already. You asked it from our Mishnah. You said in our Mishnah that the roof was its own domain, and we answered that. You already resolved that. You said it means that you can't cross the line. So hachanami over here also. Yeah, you have like ein lahem ela gagan means that you can carry everywhere. No, it just means that you can't carry past the line. So even if it's within 2 amas of the border of the other person's rishus, you can't carry over the line. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, I never heard this whole discussion. That Shmuel says, that there are barriers, there are partitions here, even though it's not really there. Amar Abaya, this is common for this to happen, where Rabbi Yosef forgot his learning, and Abaya would remind him. And the way he would remind him is he would tell him something that he was machadash on it. There's something that he said about it. So he says, no, Abaya, atamrit nalan. Rabbi Yosef, he tells to his teacher, he said, you did tell it to us. And you even explained something else. You said that gag gadol asamach l'katan. If you have a large roof that's next to a small roof, you just pull up the pictures because that will explain everything. See what's going on. Those are our roofs. It's going over the wall or going through the wall. Okay, that's a good asik. I'm sorry, there's no picture. There's no picture. Okay. Basically, what you have to do is you have to imagine a small square next to a large rectangle. Now, when you go from this rectangle into the small square, you're blocked by these walls.
Is it the one on bottom, maybe on bottom of 190? Picture 111?
Let me check.
No, that's Professor base. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll do it like this.
It's in the art scroll. The art scroll has it as the footnote.
You want to show it there? I'll just do it. Whoops. That's what I wanted. Let me do it's a simple thing. But let's just do it. Card. So if I get a box. Okay, this is
The Gemara we have in the Gemara we have that from the show. It has in the back. It has some pictures.
Yeah. And there's the small roof. It's really supposed to be attached. So what's happening is when I go from this way to here, it's fully open. When I go from this way to here, from the large, it's actually, there's a wall over there and a wall over there. So it's clear that this is smaller, that this really has a wall. It depends which direction I'm going. Going from the large one to the small one, there's a wall. The small one to the large one, it's paretz lagamri. It's fully open. Okay, so it goes like this. He said, gadol asamach lekatan. Is that the same concept?
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, okay.
Is that the one?
Okay. So a big roof that's next to a small roof.
Yeah.
So hagadol mutter. In the big roof, you can carry.
Right.
There's a wall. However, katan aser, the small one you can't carry. There's no wall. It's directly open. It's paretz lagamri. It's totally open. Prutza b'malua. It's open entirely to the large roof. And you said about this. Rabbi Yehuda says the name of his teacher Shmuel. Leishanu, this that you're not allowed to carry in a small roof. That's only el sheish durin al zeh. Someone is living on the roof, on this side of the roof. The durin al zeh is living on that side of the roof, in the small one and in the large one. The havalaha the katan mechitzin addresses, because that makes it that you're walking through the line. You're walking over the line. So we don't say good asik. And I'd like to say that the partition that's going through the house underneath the roof could continue up. The problem is that people are walking over the top. So I can't say a fictitious wall if everyone's habit is clearly saying that there's no wall there. So but if no one's living on this roof or that roof, then you can carry on the roof.
They have this on East New York Avenue. In Crown Heights, they have an East New York Avenue where everyone has access to the roof and you can go from one roof to the next roof, from building to building.
Here we're saying, but if they're living on the roof, this is what Rabbi, if they're living on the roof, it's a problem. If not, then it's not a problem. So Rabbi Yosef responds, this is what I said. This that we thought that you're allowed to carry in the big one, that's that if they have mechitzas all around, the gadol mishtrei b'gifufe, that the large one is mutter because there's parts of the wall that are sticking out on the sides, like we explained before. The katan nifretz b'miloi, but the small one is entirely open. Aval ein mechitza layal zeh, but if there's no mechitza surrounding the roof, it's a totally open roof with no mechitza on it, then shnei masurim, because you don't even have the gifufe, which is what's sticking out. The Gemara says, what are you saying? You said that you're talking about residence. It says, if I was talking about residence, and I said the following. This that you're not allowed to carry in the small one because it's entirely open. That's if there is a mechitza that would make it fit for dwelling. A mechitza it's not that you need to dwell. What I meant was that you need a mechitza that would make it possible to dwell up there. The gadol mishter b'gefufi, exactly what we said before, that you need a wall surrounding the whole courtyard, except it doesn't need to be crossing cross between the big one and the small one. The cotton difference for milui, and the small one is entirely open. Aval yesh mechitza ruya ledira ala gadol. The ain ruya ledira ala katan. But if there's a mechitza surrounding the large one, but not on the small one, afilu katan sharu livnei gadol. Then they can carry in afilu katan sharu livnei gadol. Then the big one can carry in the small one. My time. Well, what's the reason for that? Kivan de avad mechitza, because the small one didn't make a mechitza, and they don't live up there, so it's not considered like there's two dwellers that are answering one on the other. If one person makes a ladder, permanent ladder for his roof, then he's the only one that has access to the roof, and everyone else is as if they don't, and you don't need an Eruv up there. So let's leave it over here. Okay, have a good job.